Trump may try to exit the war and declare victory anyway, just to limit political damage before the midterms? U.S. spy agencies are now examining how Iran might react if Trump suddenly declares victory and steps back. Even as Iran-linked hackers exploit troops' personal data, U.S. intelligence attention appears fixed on Trump's political endgame. Are U.S. agencies more focused on shaping a Trump-friendly exit than protecting vulnerable troops exposed by cyber breaches? U.S. intelligence agencies are studying how Iran would react if Trump were to declare victory and begin pulling back from the war. Two U.S. officials and a person familiar with the matter told Reuters about the analysis now underway inside the intelligence community. The agencies are examining that scenario at the request of senior officials, alongside other questions tied to possible U.S. next steps in the conflict. The goal is to understand the implications of Trump potentially scaling down or stepping away from the war after claiming success. Reuters reported that Trump's political calculus could include avoiding further Republican losses ahead of the midterm elections, even as military options remain on the table. The same reporting said a rapid U.S. pullback could give Iran space to rebuild parts of its nuclear and missile programs if pressure is eased too quickly. Earlier intelligence assessments had already reached a similar conclusion, finding that Iran would probably view a sudden American step back after a victory declaration as a win. A source told Reuters, and I quote, "If Trump instead said the U.S. had won but maintained a heavy troop presence, Iran would likely see it as a negotiating tactic, but not one that would necessarily lead to the end of the war." Unquote. The CIA said it was not familiar with the intelligence community's reported assessment, cited in the same Reuters report. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence declined to comment when Reuters asked about the reported assessment. A White House spokeswoman told Reuters that the United States would not be rushed into making a bad deal, signaling that Washington still wanted negotiating flexibility. Anna Kelly said, and I quote, "U.S. is still engaging with the Iranians on negotiations and would not be rushed into making a bad deal. The president will only enter into an agreement that puts U.S. national security first, and he has been clear that Iran can never possess a nuclear weapon." Unquote. Reuters also noted that opinion polls show Trump's war on Iran is broadly unpopular with Americans. In that polling, only 26% of respondents said the campaign was worth the cost, while 25% said it had made the United States safer. A major alleged cyber breach has exposed personal information linked to U.S. troops deployed in the Persian Gulf, according to Iranian and regional reports about claims made by the Handala hacking group. Handala claimed it released the personal information of 2,379 U.S. Marines, describing the leak as proof that American forces in the region were under surveillance. Reporting on April 28 by Iranian outlets including the Tehran Times and other affiliated coverage highlighted the claimed leak during a pause in fighting and amid continued tensions over whether the war could restart. After the alleged breach, U.S. troops reportedly received threatening messages from an Iran-linked hacker group through WhatsApp and other channels. Those messages warned American service members that they were being watched and could be targeted by drones and missiles if hostilities resumed or widened. Stars and Stripes and other outlets were reported to have viewed some of the threatening messages sent to U.S. personnel, giving the claims a wider level of visibility. Messages sent to U.S. troops and seen by Stars and Stripes say, and I quote, "Your identities are fully known to our missile units, and every move you make is under our surveillance. Very soon, VU will be targeted by our Shahd drones and Kibar and Gardir missiles. We will deal with you. The terrorists whose hands are stained with the blood of the Minab schoolchildren, we suggest you call your families now and say your final goodbyes." Unquote. US President Donald Trump has issued a fresh ultimatum to Iran, this time giving Tehran 3 days. Trump told Fox News that Iran now has 3 days before its oil pipelines explode from within. He also claimed there would be permanent damage to Iran's oil wells if oil flow is not restored. Donald Trump said, and I quote, "What happens is that line explodes from within. Both mechanically and in the earth. Something happens where it just explodes, and they say they only have about 3 days left before that happens. And when it explodes, you can never rebuild it the way it is. It's a very powerful thing that takes place sort of having to do with nature." Unquote. According to Trump, the ongoing U.S. blockade would create catastrophic mechanical stress inside Iran's oil infrastructure. He further claimed that this pressure could trigger spontaneous explosions underground and within transport lines. However, Energy experts say pipelines are typically equipped with safety valves and sensors designed to halt pumping before such failure spiral. They also note that if oil cannot move through the system, operators usually stop production at the source itself. That is why some experts believe Iran may still have roughly 2 to 3 months of inland storage before any forced production cut becomes necessary. Iran's vice president and head of the Strategic Energy Policy and Management Organization, Ismail Sagab Esfahani, has also reacted. Esfahani warned that Iran would retaliate against countries backing any damage to its oil sector. In a sharp response on X, he said, "Our math is different. 1 oil well equals 4 oil wells." Ismail Sagab Esfahani said, and I quote, "If any part of our infrastructure, including oil wells, is damaged as a result of a blockade, we guarantee that 4 times the damage will be inflicted on the same infrastructure in countries that support the aggressor. Our math is different. 1 oil well equals 4 oil wells." Unquote. Despite an intense US naval blockade on Iranian ports, new data suggests the strategy is far from airtight, with Tehran continuing to export oil in ways that undercut American pressure. The blockade, imposed on April 13th, was designed to choke off Iran's primary source of revenue by restricting ships going to and from Iranian ports, especially those carrying crude. However, evidence from satellite and tanker tracking platforms indicates that Iran has still been able to load and move significant volumes of crude oil even under the restrictions. Satellite-based maritime data showed that at least 4.6 million barrels of oil were loaded onto Iranian-linked vessels since the blockade went into effect, a figure that highlights the persistence of the export network. Roughly 4 million of those barrels reportedly crossed the blockade, according to tanker trackers, a sign that Iran is still punching holes in Washington's strategy and keeping vital revenue flowing. Reports from tanker tracking firm tankertrackers.com conclude that the blockade has disrupted but not halted Iran's oil activity, forcing traffic into more complex and opaque routes. Instead of a full shutdown, Tehran has adapted by using alternative shipping lanes and covert logistics chains to sustain its exports through third-country intermediaries and difficult-to-monitor transfers. Vessels linked to Iran have reportedly succeeded in bypassing US enforcement in the Strait of Hormuz region, according to a Wall Street Journal report on April 26, exposing gaps in the monitoring architecture. Experts say this pattern has underlined how difficult it is to fully seal off a vast and strategically critical waterway such as the Strait of Hormuz, even for a major naval power. Iran has also employed tactics such as disabling or manipulating ship tracking transponders, conducting ship-to-ship transfers at sea, and rerouting vessels through the Arabian Sea and Asian waters to evade detection. Analysts add that even when ships cannot leave the region, tankers can still be loaded with crude at Iranian ports and then later transferred at sea. Rather than a clear decisive victory, the situation has therefore evolved into a cat-and-mouse dynamic at sea, with Iran constantly adjusting its methods to keep exports moving. These developments came as President Trump announced that the US would use all its cards against Iran in the Hormuz zone.